You're listening to the world's smartest podcast network.
Welcome back to another episode of Majoring in Everything. I am your host, Andrea Jones-Rooy. We're back in my kitchen. My knives are here. My refrigerator's here. And we're also joined by, that's right, you heard clearly, two amazing guests tonight. This is the first time on Majoring in Everything we've had more than one person, and we'll see why they're both here in mere moments. I am so excited to talk with them both. Please give a very warm Majoring in Everything welcome to Andrew Gerhan and Kathryn Musilek. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. So those who are listening on, I don't know, audio, I guess is the word that I want. Listening on audio rather than watching the video. We have Kathryn and Andrew here together, joining us, and we are going to have a conversation about their interests both together and as separate people, insofar as that's something that's relevant. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe you have nothing that you do that it doesn't involve the other person. willing to explore. So
totally willing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Great. So I will say, in full disclosure to listeners, that I know Andrew and Kathryn because they do the PR for this very show. So if you are listening to this show and you are not already related to me, you've probably found this show because of these two. Hooray. Round of applause. All right. You can clap for yourselves. That's great. And you've also helped with other shows, and we met through, I think, a show at Caveat 1,000,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. All roads eventually lead to Caveat. But I've invited you on the show. We're flipping the table and having you join the show rather than just email everyone in the world about the show, because it transpired that I think, Andrew, it was you who shared with me, and I appreciated the trust, that you are also involved in the music industry. You write and play music as well as are involved in a number of other aspects. Have I got that right so far?
That's all true.
All true. Good. So what I like to do at the start of the show is I bring on guests because they do multiple things that are perhaps seemingly not related to each other. And we talk about those things. But the first thing I want to do is clarify what exactly it is that you two do, because the things that I am usually aware of that my guests are doing barely even scratch the surface of all the awesome stuff that's going on. So I'll tell you what I think is going on is you run a PR firm called Shark Party Media that, Kathryn, you founded. Have I got that right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah. Great. This is like this is your life. Kathryn founded. Andrew works there. And does the PR for this show. And you also are musicians. And I was lucky enough to go to see one of your shows about a month or so ago. It was awesome. And you travel around and have been in various bands over the years. And you write music and you play music. And I think, Andrew, you do some sound engineering. That's what I've got. Let's hear what else. Yeah,
that's true. We also score films sometimes.
Okay.
And we make commercial music for, advertisement and television and such things.
Ooh.
At times. What else do we do?
I think that might be all the things for sure.
Okay.
The scoring of films is kind of an extension of the sort of music production stuff. But it's more of an interest in like composition instead of like writing grumpy songs to shout on stage. It's a totally different practice. I'm super stoked to talk about that too. Just the difference between like the sort of different reasons and ways to write music and be involved in it. And I think that's all the stuff that we do. And I'm like trying to think if there's anything else that we do individually, but we really do so much stuff together. We do.
And I guess I should say for listeners, I don't think I said this up top, is that you two are also married to each other, which is why I'm like, oh, it's like, okay, Paul and John did a lot together too. We think that's nice, but are not so impressed. But the fact that you're married to each other and work together and do music together, and I should say that's also a kind of work, is especially astounding to me. So yeah, if you think of things that you do independently, feel free to share those. That's fascinating that you actually do not, or perhaps nothing comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, well, all of those things take up a lot of our waking life. So, and it's not like we're in the same room doing the same things 24/7.
Right.
We have different roles in a lot of that stuff. Like the film scoring is like something that I'll do a lot of the composition stuff and he'll do a lot of the production stuff. He'll shine it up and mix it. And he's like such a great sounding board to sort of like come up with new ideas or be like, this part doesn't work. This part works better. And I'll be like, I'm stuck. This part isn't working. So, it's like a teamwork kind of thing. But yeah, a lot of our waking hours are spent on these endeavors. And we also find time to watch a lot of television. That's something we do together.
Perfect.
Watch a lot of very good television.
Nice.
And HBO. Get it? Don't call it television.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think those are all the things that I can think of that I do. And I think I do most of them with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's mostly true. That's got most of it.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I hope that, what if this moment was like, you figure out, you're like, well, I do all this other stuff. You're like, I had no idea. I play chess in the park every day for 6 hours. Like, what? Where have you been? I don't know.
We're cyclists. We also go on very long bike rides and camp. We do bike camping. That's
cool.
A lot more hobbyist than it is sort of artistic endeavor, but it's like
that counts.
Kind of a big thing.
It sounds like a very big
thing that he got me into. That's like really hard to do.
Very cool. Well, this is one of those where social media is both a source of information and also totally misleads. So only after you said that, I was like, oh, right. I've seen pictures of the two of you like on weekends with bikes and helmets and looking like you're somewhere awesome, and didn't like put it together that it could be a huge, long, multi-day camping thing, if that makes sense. So hooray for social media, I think is the takeaway. Right. All right. So I want to ask, so Kathryn, this is how we met, was on the Iowa show way back in 2020. And you were putting on a show with I think political Iowa politics group based here in New York in advance of the primaries way back in 2020, right back when we thought that was the big news of the day and not that our worlds were about to end. Yes. And one of the things that struck me at that moment was that you both are originally from Iowa and my father is from Iowa. And my understanding of people from Iowa, at least as my father's family goes, is that very few of them leave Iowa. I'm going to get kicked out of my family for saying this. So my first question to both of you, did you meet in Iowa? Are you both from Iowa? To explain?
No, I'm actually not. I'm not.
All right. Yeah. Show's canceled. Forget it. This is meant to be an Iowa show. Andrew, you can go sit in the other room. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Explain your origins to me. Is that a good interview question?
Totally. I was born and raised in the middle of Iowa, in a small town called Nevada near Ames, Iowa, which is where the Iowa State University is. Lots of like agriculture, lots of aerospace engineering and stuff like that happens there. Born and raised in a very sleepy town that is like a town that you have to get away from. You flee to New York City for like the art and the I'm not going to say that there isn't, bigotry here, but there is like a lot more open-mindedness and different points of view exist in a city than do in like a small sleepy town. I spent my junior year of high school in Italy as a foreign exchange student and then came back. And then I went to the University of Iowa. I went to film school, thus the film scoring. I went to film school. I was in all the bands in Iowa City, like so many bands. Some of them lasted for like a week. Some of them went on national tours. Some of them, lasted for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And
congratulations to those bands. Yeah, really hanging in there. The grit, I expect, is what got you to that second week.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But then I graduated. I dropped in and out of school a lot because I was doing a lot with those bands and going on tours and stuff like that. And I'd be like, I'm going to be a rock star instead of whatever film school makes you. And then finally went back and finished my degree and came right out to New York, where all of my friends and some family were like pulling me out, calling me every weekend to be like, when are you getting here? So I came out and it turned out that all of the experience that I had with all of that band stuff, the promotion, the PR, the marketing that happens on the road, going into, radio shows and all that, turns out that's like something that people have made into jobs in New York City, which was a very nice surprise. And so I got one of those. And so that's leads me up to like the start of PR, is that I locked into a small agency. And that's how the PR stuff started.
So you had the skills from having marketed and promoted your own bands in Iowa, and you show up in New York City and say, here I am, like brand new big city. And they say, oh, by the way, your skill set is perfect for a whole industry. Like, is that? Wow. Yeah, that almost never happens. Well, and so did you have family and friends already here? Like, so you came and knew people, or were you like the only one?
I did. I had there's a surprising amount of people actually in Iowa who go to New York City. Like now that now that we've talked about it and now that everyone's heard it on the podcast, they're going to start hearing, like meeting everyone else from Iowa. It just sort of starts to happen.
I see.
Yeah. So there are a lot of Iowans who, or at least they used to flee Iowa for New York. But my sister was here. She was here for a long time. And then like 3 of my very best friends were here as well.
Oh, wow.
So it just made sense to come out. And then we'd start like accumulating other Iowans and then making a big gaggle of friends from all of the Iowans' friends. And they'd be like, there's so many Iowans at this party. We'd be like, we know.
Yeah. It's by design. Yeah. Wow. I mean, social networks are what they are. And I'm still surprised to hear that. So when I met you two, I was so surprised because I had never met anyone from Iowa in New York. And I think apart from you, Kathryn, and now Andrew is dead to me because I'm sitting here thinking you're from Iowa. I don't even know what we're doing here. And then I met 2 people, Kathryn, at both of your show who are also from Iowa, and that makes 3 total. But I have this affinity for Iowa because of my father. But I guess having a father who grew up there does not get you into the Iowa club in New York City. That's what I'm getting at. So noted. I'll have my father call you all and see what we can get. All right, Andrew. Okay. So you're not from Iowa. Where else in the world could you possibly have come from?
Well, Schenectady, of course.
Of course. Yes.
It's my home state. I lived in the Bay Area from right after high school, like as soon as I could escape, for 15 years, and then moved back to New York about 15 years ago.
Okay. There's a lot of escaping and fleeing in this episode so far.
Yeah.
We're both Sagittarians also.
Oh, so I see. All right. Well, that explains
for that.
Mm-hmm. We should have opened with that. Right.
Yeah.
So what brought you to New York City?
Well, I came here from the Bay. It was mostly, I was working out there for a long time, actually, as a physicist, and it was time to switch vocations. And what better way to do that than to move to New York? Right.
The old physics PR trajectory that we all know and love, that classic group.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here we go. So this is one of the many things I love about this podcast is at the opening, I gave you the opportunity of saying what else you do. And now you're just going to drop physics in like it's, you're like, what else is there? I can't think of anything. I mean, I get that maybe it's not something you actively practice. Do you practice physics, do physics?
Yeah, not anymore.
Okay.
I have a degree from Berkeley.
Okay.
I worked at a little company that did, SBIR research grants for a long time. So I was writing grants and working in the lab and kind of got burned out on it. And I still love physics very much, but I figured out that I don't necessarily love working in it as much as doing other things, And so I was apprenticing out there at a recording studio, kind of nights and weekends and every day that I played hooky from the lab. And started doing more and more of that stuff. And at the time, the Bay Area was busy driving all the artists out. And now I think there are no artists left at all. And
so I hear.
So New York was a good, a better place for that.
Now, did you grow up playing music, and were you in bands in Schenectady? I know the place. I just don't know how to pronounce it. And or was music something you found later, like once you were on your physics path?
No, I've been in bands like my whole life. Playing my whole life and whatnot. Yeah, my high school bands used to come down here to the city and play that kind of
nice. Thing. All right. So, and Kathryn, I forget, did you grow up playing music too?
I did. Like your whole life? Piano at like 5. Very musical family. Super like anti-sport, pro. Practice or you don't eat kind of family.
Wow. And that nourishes such an intrinsic love of music, I'm sure. You're like, well, we do it so we don't starve is I would say the driving force. Life is why I do it.
The opposite of the starving artist. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. You can't be an artist unless you're really full. All right. So you both end up in New York. I feel like I'm now turning this into, I said before we started that with the headphones, you have a little Lady in the Tramp look. It's very romantic, but I feel like I'm turning this into some kind of like rom-com. It's like, how did you two, I assume Kathryn, you're carrying your guitar on your back, and Andrew, you're on your way to a recording session, and you run into each other on the J train or something like that. But, at the risk of turning this into some like strange relationship episode, which we certainly can, but how did you meet? How did the two of you come together? Was it music? Was it work?
Yes.
Was it physics?
It was both. It was music and work. I was actually working PR for a band that Andrew was in. And we didn't start dating then. We met each other about 1 billion times in like hello, just like,
right.
Just like, I clocked that he existed, but it was just like not sort of wasn't really appropriate. And you just don't think about that. You don't think about like dating clients, or you don't think about that sort of thing. But then we had a friend in town, a mutual friend in town, and they were releasing this documentary thing, right? It was for Lavinia's thing.
Yeah.
The 78 Project is the name of the film. It's gorgeous. You should watch it.
78 Project.
We just kept running into each other. And there was like a night at one of the many events where there was a seat next to me, and he sat down, and then we just started talking. And that's kind of the rest is
history.
I'll be asking you both to score this episode, by the way. And this is where you can play like all the romantic, maybe a single violin in the distance or something.
That's right,
whatever.
that's
I won't impinge on your vision. All right. So how do you, so I want to talk PR first, because I imagine that a lot of people don't actually know what PR is. And I'm sure you're sick to death of explaining this to people and what the difference is between that and marketing, or are you a producer, or what's going on? So I'd love to hear from both of you what it is that you do in your day-to-day now at Shark Party Media. And also, so Kathryn, you founded it. Am I understanding correctly that you're at this other agency and you say, forget this, I can do this on my own? How does Shark Party Media start?
Sort of. I was at another agency and left and did something else for a second, and then was like, no, I think I'm going to start a company, but a very different company, because I would never start a competing company.
Ooh.
That's shitty.
Right.
Because the company that I started in was like a very large, I was representing big rock stars from the UK and stuff like that. And so then I wanted to do baby bands. I wanted to do like cool stuff. So that's how Shark Party started. Was that way. And then it morphed into realizing how many podcasts I was listening to, going into more comedy spaces. And so now it's like opened up quite a bit to a lot of podcasters, amazing podcasters like yourself.
Only the finest podcasters in all the land. Yes.
Seriously, listener, Andrew Jones-Rooy is the coolest in the world. And you are full of so many amazing ideas. And you just do them. You just are always in action. And we're like always in awe of you.
Oh, well, thank you. I shouldn't tell you then that before this, I was asleep for 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right. So I literally was working on something and I was like, I'm falling asleep. But now we're here.
Do you want to
explain yourself? Yes.
What PR is?
Sure. I mean, you mentioned marketing, and I think people have a relatively clear idea of what marketing is, right? Like buying ad space and, that sort of thing. PR is not that. PR is, we do a lot of, we reach out to journalists. We try to coerce journalists, get them interested, we help them to reach the decision that they should write about our clients, but it's journalistic coverage, including, getting people on podcasts and such. So it's a vote of confidence in the thing that is getting covered, because the journalist sees it as, in their flooded inbox, that's the thing that they decide to focus on and write about or publicize in whatever way they do.
Mm-hmm.
So we liaise with the media.
Yeah, we liaise between the client and the media.
Right.
That's like another way that I put it. And like, because sometimes it's not pitching out, sometimes it's gatekeeping, sometimes it's like strategizing, sometimes it's a client where you're like, I don't know, should we start with Rolling Stone or Billboard? Like sometimes it's something more about like messaging and sort of deciding what is the best sort of like look for a client or whatever. You know, there's like a lot of different ways, and every single client, you know, even if they're on the same level of like emergingness to sort of established, everyone is different. It's just like such a different, because each one of them has a different story, and that's what you're doing too. You're like figuring out what the story is of someone's project or of someone, and you know, alongside them, you do it together. You're not just sort of like out there making stuff up or telling a story that they don't agree with. You know, it's like about like, and I feel like the exciting thing in the job is about sort of really getting someone and then finding a way to very quickly get someone in the media to also get them. Because you get like a sentence, you know, like if you think about the way that we all consume media, et cetera, like the headline editor industry has gone so batshit, is because it's like you get like a sentence. And so that's kind of a fun and exciting part of the job, I think, is being like, who, what, where, when, why.
Right.
It's like who, what, where, when, why do I give a shit?
Right. And it sounds almost like you're doing some, I know there's more to it, but like some matchmaking, right? Where you're like, oh, I know this writer over at Variety, and I know that this artist has this interesting story. I bet this author or this writer who wants a story would love to tell this story, which is a story, by the way, we want to tell. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. And writers also start to build up trust, you know, and they start to say, these people aren't going to bring us anything that's total garbage. So at least I'll read their email, you know?
Right. Yeah. Headlines have gone crazy. And I would imagine not subject lines per se, but just like anytime you send an email, it's almost probabilistic that someone's going to open it, as opposed to, for sure, at least in my inbox at this point. Like, oh, mark all is read. We're done. I should know this. PR stands for public relations, right?
Does.
Yeah. Okay, great. I was like, in my head, I was like, that's what I always said when I read, but I was like, I should know these things. All right. So anyone out there who says, I have this cool project, I would love help from Kathryn and Andrew, if you have the bandwidth to help me get the word out about this great project that I'm doing, or just tell my story because I'm an awesome person who does lots of things, do it in advance. And that's a really rich coming from me, because I do nothing in advance, and it drives, I'm sure, Andrew crazy. But okay, so it has to be news, right? So I don't know if we can talk about this, but you know, you have a client who just released a comedy album, and it's awesome, and everyone should listen. I don't know if we can plug it, if that's against the rules.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So
Jen Kirkman.
Yeah. Okay, Gen X is the album, right? And she's someone you've represented for a while.
That's correct.
And I see what you mean. It's the album just came out, and now I'm seeing headlines all over the place about this new album. Is that kind of generally the story for how these things go?
Yeah, totally. You want a lot of lead time to sort of make sure that you get in front of the editors and journalists, writers, podcasters, whatever, so that the week of the release, it is news. And then you see it everywhere. You can kind of like, there's something, you know, you can embargo pieces. You can work with people for like, get the piece all ready to go like 2 months before it's out, and they know that they're going to be posting it on the release day. You can, you know, there's all these kinds of ways to work if you have enough lead time to sort of really stretch your legs and really get whatever's available, you know. Plenty of time for everyone who wants to pass. Plenty of time for everyone who wants to do it. Yeah, it's nice.
I was going to say, I imagine that the world of any artist, and this sounds to me like both an art and a science, right? The strategizing and the matchmaking and the telling of the story and all of that. I imagine there's a lot of rejection. I mean, I can speak to my own, you know, the ratios of how many pitches you send versus how many things are written about, right? Is this something where you just have to have a thick skin, or you just don't, you and your clients don't take it personally and say, yeah, the New York Times they've covered too many comedy albums. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you just have to know that a low percentage of what you send out is going to actually turn into coverage,
Yeah.
And you can see that if you're working with a name that's, when you're working with a household name, that percentage goes up a bit, but it doesn't go up, you're not like at 50% or something, you go from like 10 to 11% or something.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
It would be amazing if you could have a name where you're just like, and maybe those names exist. You like contact the New York Times and say, I'm so-and-so. And they say, all right, that might exist for some people. Maybe Obama.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you have to be president to approach 50%. All right. So Andrew, how do you get involved in PR? I didn't hear PR in your physics training.
No, well, like I said, I did a bunch of grant writing and, wrote my share of chunks of science papers and that kind of thing. So I have experience writing for a living a bit, and being a musician for most of my life, I've hired publicists at various times. So I was aware of the industry and the job. And then, Kathryn and I were together for a long time before I started doing PR. It just started to make more and more sense. She had more work than she knew what to do with. And I had experience writing for a living, and it's a very writing, communications-based job. And I knew and understood and respected the value of PR because I'd been on the other side of the, email inbox, as it were. And just slowly started trying it out, doing little bits of campaigns, and found my way in, and it just, built up a client base. And it's a great gig because it can also be, we can do it remotely at times,
right.
So if we're doing stuff elsewhere, we can take work with us, which can be a blessing and a curse sometimes. But
I'm picturing you on a mountainside.
For the most part, it's a good thing.
Yeah, with your bikes and tents, doing PR. Like, again, a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, yes. That has happened. Yeah, we have taken, laptops on the bike before. And
yeah, I totally remember like stopping in the Palisades, like to take a business call.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Just give me a second.
Yeah.
Well, this is the opposite side, but Kathryn, you were the first person I spoke to in 2020 because my boyfriend and I went camping in Yosemite over like that New Year's. And we came down the mountain on like January 1 or January 2, thinking it's going to be a great year. And I had gotten an email from you about that show that we were doing. And so I was like, oh, and it wasn't a business call in the sense that I was just excited to be on the show. But I was like, I have a weirdly parallel experience where I was literally coming down a mountainside. And I was like, yeah, nice. I'll host the whatever call on the Iowa show or whatever.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then I immediately, this is not really related, but I immediately ate something that I was allergic to. I got covered in hives, which I think is a better... more predictive of what happened in 2020. Because for like literally an hour, I was like, this is going to be a great year. I got this new show. And then I was like, I'm allergic to everything. And then the world. I don't know if you remember 2020. I won't go into the details. What's the origin of the name?
I was G-chatting with my friend Nick, trying to come up with a cool name. And I was just saying stuff. And I really like the cadence of like 1 syllable, 2 syllables. And I really like a sort of like internal rhyme. So when I was like shark party, and then I was like, oh boy, then this also has a lot of fun sort of connotations like sink or swim. And then also the idea of like how there's like business sharks and all that stuff, but how I'm really interested in the community of it and the party of it. And, I've been to so many business events that just are parties or feel like parties or whatever. So it really just sounded like the words themselves phonetically sounded nice and fun to me. And then it turned out there were some fun little things that you could apply to it.
And I hadn't thought of that.
A certain skit, right?
Oh, yes. There is a skit that happened, I think, in 2013 or 2014 by a dude, and it's called Shark Party. And there are many times where they're like, Oh, I love that skit, that shark party skit by that dude whose name I don't even want to say right now. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't name my company after a skit from a dude in 2014. Like maybe he heard Shark Party through the ether somehow, and then he did it. But anyway,
okay.
Sorry, I'm getting grumpy.
No, get grumpy. This is we embrace all emotions here at Majoring in Everything. So all emotions included. Wow. So okay. So glad we cleared this up because I brought the guy from the skit. Yeah, right. Yeah, he's here. I see. So he stole it. It's like when you name your kid something that like 2 years before it's a major name in a movie. I'm trying to think of a good name. All I could think of was Daenerys, and I don't think that counts. But you know what I mean? Right. It's like, I'm going to name my son Jon Snow, and it's 2 years before Game of Thrones is even a thing. You're like, okay. Right. Yeah. All right.
Or like Corona beer, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it sounds already like, you know, if you like the sound of it and how the words go together, I agree. It has a great ring. It sounds like your music training, maybe I'm crowbarring this in. It sounds like your music training really is quite helpful in PR. Is that like so desperate how I made that transition?
I love it.
Perfect.
It's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about, okay, let's talk music. And then I want to talk about the intersection, if there is one, to the extent that there is one. So one of the things you mentioned, so you write your own music for your own band, which is called Nevada.
Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't know that was named after your hometown in Iowa until this episode. So now I got it. And you do music for TV, you score movies, all these different things. Tell me about, you know, why all these different areas? Why not just write songs for your band and call it good? Like what's the interest in expanding out to other types? And how different are those skills?
Oh, yeah, it's they're all tied for sure. They're all tied together. Certainly music for your own band is a little more of your personal thesis or something, you know. You're like it, you know, your sound, man. You know,
it's like your soul on a chopping block.
Yeah.
Out here being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. Goddamn time.
And our band, you know, every good art effort has constraints that it operates within. So our band, one of the primary constraints is that it's all Kathryn's songs. She's the primary songwriter in that band. So you know, I'll say that the band is our sound with the caveat that they're Kathryn's songs. But, you know, I'm able to lay in as hard as I want with my sounds in that band. She kind of gives me free rein to steamroll over it with guitar.
Yeah, I'm not like hiring guns. I'm very into the collaborative and into seeing what can happen when I bring in like some little chords and lyrics and then like employ the music brains of other people. I don't mean for money. I just mean utilize, you know, get them working, because I've got 3 other amazing music brains in the band. So why would I stop them or be like, play that note here or whatever?
Right.
I don't care.
And then if you're doing film music, the director is the buck stops with the director, really, and you're kind of working for the director. And you have a partnership with them on some level to work, you know, to create the music that they need, but you're ultimately really working to support their vision. So it's kind of a different, it's still your sounds and your art and all that, but it's maybe less of a diary page kind of a thing, you know, and you're able to take yourself out of it a little bit more, which can be a really refreshing twist on it, you know. And some of the film music we've made is some of my favorite music we've ever made, you know, but it's not to say that I like it more than the band music, but it's just different, you know. It's in service of the picture that it's going to be coupled to.
It's also really kind of actorly, like you're kind of putting yourself into the position of the character that you are sort of like scoring the emotion to support, or the mood in the scene, which is really exciting to sort of just it's, you know, it's about empathy, and it's about like compassion, and it's about acting, but instead of acting by like saying words and pretending to be someone, you're doing it with like music that supports, which I think is so fun and interesting. And it's a totally other exercise, and you have to take it seriously or it just doesn't work, you know, like, which is another way that it's kind of like an acting exercise.
You have to be like in the scene, right?
Yeah, totally. You have to be like there with them, like in picture, you know, watching the picture and feeling like, you know, and then a lot of those decisions are up to the director. Like you'll ask the director, like, who am I with in this scene, or what is the mood, or like, because, you know, as we've seen with like collage films on the internet where they rescore like the Goofy movie to make it look like David Lynch or whatever, music and tone has everything to do with how we consume the messaging of moving image. So it's like exciting to have that kind of like power to support a vision or a message in a scene, or, you know, whatever it is. Like somebody walks in and you know that they're the villain because I'm like, da-da, whatever it is.
The Darth Vader theme, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like an exciting artistic practice. And it's something so different and so out of myself.
Right.
I'm not writing about me. We're writing about some moving image scene.
It's not even our emotion. It's the emotion that we find in that scene, you know?
Right.
It's written by the writer and directed by the director.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see it? I'm imagining, based on your description, you see it after it's already been put together and then they add the music, or do they kind of tell you what's going on and then layer the music and you don't see the full scene until it's done? Do you know what I mean? Do they send you like a musicless movie and you add the music?
Yeah, usually it's that.
Oh, really?
You get what's called picture lock, you know, where the editing is all the way or really close to all the way done. You'll hear some certain examples where the music is intertwined earlier on in the process, but usually not.
I see.
Usually not. And usually that would be like a serious celebrity composer that gets brought in much further upstream.
Right.
I think the Joker, they had scenes where the music preceded the shooting of the scene, and they're
Hilder.
Yeah, and
I think she got an Oscar for that.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Wow, I still haven't seen the Joker, and I know that I need to. And now I extra. Oh, you haven't seen it either? Oh, I forget it.
No, but she's amazing. She's Chernobyl, and she's done like a number of other really amazing things. She recorded the score for Chernobyl, like in Chernobyl, like in the drone.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it was in Chernobyl, but it was in another nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I was going to say, when I heard it, I was like, that sounds like nuclear power plant music to me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. This small aside, we watched, I've seen the first 5 minutes of Chernobyl only, and I know I need to watch the rest, but my boyfriend and I thought it was going to be like a slow build to the disaster, and that would be like the pinnacle of it. So we were like, let's just watch this, something to fall asleep to. And we turned it on and we're just like, ah! So then we turned it off. But I do need to watch it, but I can't like bring myself to, and these days it kind of seems like a lot to take in, but we can set that aside.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I see what you're saying about scoring being both. I never thought of it. Like, you're practicing your art, but it feels almost like it's liberating in a way, because you're like, this isn't reflecting me. I'm helping augment someone else's thing, which I imagine comes with its own pressures. Like, what if the director doesn't like it? What if I'm not actually But I'm very interested. It's never occurred to me to do art in service of anything but myself, which is I'm realizing this in real time. You're making me think of like Da Vinci, right? Because he would get hired to paint cathedrals, and I'm not much of an art history person, right? But that's the kind of thing. I mean, a lot of great works come from someone else asking you to do it.
Commissioning or something.
There it is. That's the word I want.
Having a client. Yeah. It's true. I think there is, this is a little bit of the crossover in PR and in composing film, is that it does have to do, it has so much to do with communication skills. And like our communication skills are not just reserved for the media that we're pitching, but also for the client. Because there's a certain way you have to approach a client and like help them understand what's going on and get the sort of answers that you need from them and all of that. And like with the director, a lot of times clients don't know what PR is when they come to you. And so you have to sort of like educate them through that. And then a lot of times a director comes to us and has no idea any kind of vocabulary for music. So we have to be like, like, is it like happy sounding or grumpy sounding or angry sounding, or like, is this a good guy? Is this a bad guy? And then we're like, okay, what kind of sound palette are you thinking? And they're like, I don't know what that is. And you're like, do you want to make it sound like robots? Do you want to make it sound like orchestras? Do you want to make it sound like beautiful choir boys singing in the heavens? Like, what is the tone that, and, sometimes you're like, I don't know, just do whatever, which is the worst answer, because then you bring it like, I don't know, just make it sound more like Bob Dylan. And you're like, this is Choir Angels.
Why didn't you say Bob Dylan to start with?
We could do Bob Dylan. That's so much easier than Choir Angels.
Right.
So, but there is also like, it is still in service of ourselves, because there's like a lot of sort of like esteem that we get, I think, from like working well with the director or producer and creating some, especially when they're great. Like, sometimes a director or producer just sucks. And so there's no vision. And so we can't be supporting, but there's a couple of directors that like bring us in early. And, one of them, we're still talking to, he'll just be like, what movie do you guys want to make? Let's make that. Like, it's like super fun. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What movie do you want to make? And are you making it?
I don't know. We were talking about something about anxiety, about being places you're not supposed to be, something about that. Like the fear of being where you're not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. That one's yet to be made. We're maybe afraid to go there.
Right. It's like, it almost sounds appropriate. Like that's the movie that's never made, but not that that's gonna be. Hang on. Okay. You can decline to answer if you want, but why? That's a really intense place to start for a movie. Like, why is that a fear of yours? Is that something you both come into? Why think of, like, that's a very specific, serious fear, I should say.
Why did we come to that? We were watching something else that felt really great and was doing some of, we saw, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Horrifying. And it was just like this sort of like, and also the director.
We were talking with him about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he was talking a lot about his anxiety. So we were talking about like how to come up with something about like what causes an anxiety? What are some like modes that create anxiety? And we were talking about, and also it was like during the pandemic. So.
Right. During the pandemic, we were all, if you left your house, you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be. So I can see. Right. It's like, how did you think of that? You're like, well, I had to go to the grocery store and that was it.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. I see. All right. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. So what, and this is for both of you, what sound palette, that's my new word. I did not know what a sound palette was until moments ago. What sound palette would one use for a movie about anxiety?
Any that you like.
Yeah.
That's the fun thing. Yeah. It's like one of those, like, you can just like spin one wheel, spin the other, like anxiety. And then like, deep orchestral.
I see.
You can score it with anything. It just depends on what your film is.
I see.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, it makes me think of floating high, tense Alfred Hitchcock strings or something, but you could get the same thing from synthy sounds or guitars or
Piercy robot sounds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what's so exciting about it, is that you can do it's endless. Like, and then you get a couple constraints in, and then it's clear like what to do.
Yeah. And sometimes it's even just down to like, what sound palette do you like? I'm really into synthy stuff, new wavy stuff. Okay. Boom,
right.
That's what we'll use,
Or we'll ask, like, what are some, if people don't know, like back to the whole communicating with people who don't know how to talk about music, we'll just be like, what are some of your favorite films? Like, what, and they don't even know. People don't even know what a score did to them. So maybe it's even more sort of like secret agent stuff.
Yeah.
You don't even know what a score does to you. You just know that you loved a movie. unless you're like a
Right.
score nerd or unless it's a really, really prominent score.
Right. My boyfriend and I, when we watch movies and TV, but more so movies, I think, and though I'm curious what whether it's fair for me to combine those two, he notices the music a lot more than I do. And he'll really comment like, oh, I love this and I love that. And I'll be like, oh, was there music? You know, like I don't even, which is perhaps offensive to say to two people who write music for movies. But so I guess the superficial question here is doing it for TV the same, like long form TV? Is it the same kind of thing or is it totally different?
No, I mean, some TV shows are really scored like films are, you know, and some are quite the opposite. You know, if you think about like I don't know, like Seinfeld, you just get the slap bass thing that comes in between all the scenes or the little sting.
Yeah,
exactly.
Seinfeld's what I thought of. I was like, please tell me you did Seinfeld. Just like that was awesome.
No.
Yeah. But you do more movies than film, fair? Or I'm sorry, movies than TV. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think we haven't done any TV. We've gotten some songs onto some TV, but that's a different thing. That's sync placement. So it's when you have an already existing track and a television show wants it. And so they give you a little bit of money and then you get a little bit of money from your performing rights organization on the back end. But that's a different thing. And we refer to that as needle drop. Like when you see like a song that you know in Grey's Anatomy, that's like a needle drop. But throughout the whole show, there's just going to be some strings here and there when somebody's sad or whatever. And that's the score.
Right. Okay. Why is it a needle drop?
Like on a record player.
Oh, this is how little I know about music. I was imagining like a needle in a haystack and you drop it and you happen to find it. And it's the song that your friend made.
It's that too.
It's that 100%. Too. Yeah. Needle drop, you know, like the device to play music. Right. Got it. Okay. All right. So I want to go to something you said that I am fascinated by, which is this, and others have talked about it too, but the role of constraints in creativity. And you made it sound like, from what you described, that it's like, you know, the director wants something, you have some cool ideas, there's other constraints, and then all of a sudden you have a piece. I mean, that sounds like the most refreshing artistic experience anyone can ever go through. So what are those other constraints? I mean, I guess it's maybe budget and resources and whatever else in the context of that project, but why is that so liberating? Why is that so helpful for the two of you? Is it because you can't just second guess yourself forever?
Yeah, there's no, I mean, when you're making art, when you're looking at the proverbial blank canvas, there's no right answer and wrong answer. You know, it's not like doing a math problem where you're either right or you're wrong. You know, so constraints, the possibilities are endless, and especially with modern studio technology and computers and all that, we can put literally any sound ever created and then some that haven't been into it, and so you could just get crippled with indecision, so constraints really help to guide you through a process.
And when you bring up budget as a constraint, we have seen a lot of television shows get a little bit ruined by too much music money. Like, go see Stranger Things season 1 and Stranger Things season 2. And Stranger Things season 1 is that warm, amazing, like vintage analog synth everywhere. And it's just cool and it feels nostalgic. And then season 2 is just like the boys are back, and it's like all big money,
expensive needle drop.
And for me, that lifting of that constraint by giving them too much money, I feel like that made it a different show for me. And I don't need to judge it too hard, we'll work with anyone, but, but yeah.
So Stranger Things shouldn't call you. That's what I'm hearing, is that I
don't want to work with season 2 of Stranger Things.
Okay. Well, they're big listeners, but all right. Okay. You heard it here first. Only season 2. They're the only ones that tune in. That's
right. Or like if we had like lots and lots of budget, then we also even location wouldn't be a restraint. We could like have friends in LA drum up a quartet and like get some really fancy real live orchestra instead of, there's like lots of ways that but yeah, when you know what it is that you have to work with, then you're dealing with the actuals, and then you can figure it out. And it's not, it's not the blank slate. And choices, like too much choice is depressing and stifling and paralyzing. So it helps for someone to take a few things off the table.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm thinking about that in the context both of my own work and how I could handle some benefit from some constraints, but also I think the thesis of this podcast to an extent, which is I like to talk with people who have lots of interests that go in lots of different places, and that can be amazing. And my goal with the podcast is to celebrate this. And in part because A, I think it's awesome, but B, I spent a lot of my life being like, living in the dark side of that, which is you're paralyzed. Should I do more of this? Should I do more of that? I mean, have there ever been points in your lives where you say, I'm spread too thin, there's too many things. Should I focus on PR? Should I focus on scoring? How do you navigate the fact that you both are so talented? Should I go back to physics, right? That you are so talented. How do you not let that be a problem in your own lives, I guess is my question.
Practice.
Yeah.
Therapy.
Therapy.
Gratitude for what is right in front of us.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going on. And also just understanding that you have to earn with integrity. So wherever that's happening, you have to do that. And that's fine and great. And I like everything that we do. I like everything that I do. And so it's a great problem to have, to be like, oh, I haven't really scored a film in a little while or whatever. Because that means that I've just been busy with something else. But there is a total artistic existential crisis all the time, a little. I mean, to be really honest.
Low grade perpetual crisis.
There's a hum about should we be doing this? Should we go all in on this? Or should we those kind of questions. And I blame a lot the sort of self-help industry about you can build whatever you just, all that kind of stuff. Cause it's I don't know, it's difficult. We're in our 40s and we really like everything we do. So it's kind of fine with me just to have some some spinning plates that are not going to overwhelm me. And I'm not I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Those kind of commit 157% and friggin' all that kind of stuff can just be a little bit well, no, that's not what I don't want that. That's not the thing. That's not the thing for me.
Right. No, I'm glad you brought up self-help because I have been both a consumer and rejecter of self-help in various turns over the years. Right. And one thing that comes to mind as you're describing that is that theory that's you have 4 burners on your oven and only one can be on at a time. And it can be your work or your family or your this or your that. And you have to pick one and you have to go all in. And yeah, you can't climb the mountain unless you're passionate about it. And it's all you do. And you have a hyper schedule and it's the first thing you do in the morning. But it's I don't know, what if all the burners are on kind of low? Is that an option?
Yeah.
And I think I was told, at least for a long time, that if you did that, you were basically just failing at all 4. You can't boil any pots if all 4 are on too low. So it's not to say that it's you could get infinitely low, but you can certainly have more than one going at a time and find that fulfilling, I think.
Yeah. And I think, the risk, if you just focus on only one thing, and put all your eggs don't put all your eggs in one basket. Right. Is that, you get sick of it or you don't, it loses its luster. And I think sometimes doing multiple things, they can be the antidotes for each other a little bit, So that's the positive spin on it. The negative spin, of course, is the existential crisis of, who am I? And am I for real at any of this? Because I also, do other things.
Yeah.
But
the imposter crap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think for me personally, as time goes on and I have sustained myself wearing multiple hats for, a larger collection of years and decades, I just start to realize no, that's just my career. That's what shape it is. And it's a weird shape, but it doesn't really matter if it doesn't work for anybody else. It just has to work for me.
Well, that's the thing too. I feel my biggest the thing that I think about is that it seems to be unpopular with like who you're working with, that you do another thing sometimes. Like, so that's, it's interesting. It's like, it's almost like this podcast is a little bit of an outing, because it's like people who like,
sorry about that.
Oh no. I mean, we would have said no. I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think it's awesome for people to, major in everything. And it's not something that, like, first of all, when I was only doing PR, I did cut off music for a while on purpose. I was like, you're done. You're dead to me. I got a desk job now, you see? And then like got really, really depressed and also really broke. It was like just not working. And I was like, this is really bad. So it doesn't really let you go anyway. Like, I feel like if you have a certain artistic practice, it's not really going to just let you waltz off into the woods anyway. It's like, sorry, like we're together on this forever. So you're, and like just maybe, playing a few classical pieces here and there isn't enough to satisfy. Like, I think that like, if you're a creator of music, you probably just have to keep creating music. So you just have to do it. And like, everybody can just deal with it. And it's fine.
Everybody can deal with it. Well, Andrew, that makes me think of something early on when we were talking about this, and you said exactly what Kathryn just said, which is that there are various points where one or both of you have tried to quit music and you just never quite managed to do it. I mean, what do you quit because exactly that mentality? Like, well, how am I going to be a serious adult and how am I going to climb this mountain if I'm doing all the, like, is that the narrative? Is that the reason basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was, much younger and starting my career in science, was one of the times that I tried to put down music, and the same thing. I just got really depressed and missed it a lot, and but I thought I had to do it to be responsible and focus on one thing and do all that. And it turns out it didn't work, So is there something fundamentally wrong with me because of that? Or is it just that that's not the shape career that is going to work for me, How
did you come around to bring music back into your life? Was it like I'm thinking like like an addict being like, I'm off the rails and like pick up a guitar and like go for it, which is probably unfair to those suffering from addiction. It's a disease. But what was it like? Like, what is it? Do you feel like a kind of shame when you go back into it? Or do you think like, you know what, I'm depressed and I think this would help me and it's a much more positive reunion?
I think at that point, it was less of a conscious decision. I think I just kind of I ended up being in another band and realized that it was a good thing, It's like, oh, wait, I guess I started it again, didn't I?
Am I holding a cigarette? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah.
It got me. It like snuck in. I got like my first MacBook or whatever that had GarageBand. And then I opened it up just to look at it and realized that you could make music on the keyboard. And I started making like techno. Oh no, it's back. Really
that's funny.
I was like Googling for open mics in the area. And like all of a sudden I was like back in a scene.
Right.
But it really snuck in.
That's
like,
funny.
Oh, you again.
Do you think that, I mean, I'm assuming from the way that we've talked about this, that like we're born with this innate sense of music or of creativity, whether it's music or whatever art. I mean, it sounds like for both of you, it's something that you've just always known was something about it was appealing to you, right? Did you ever think about painting or some other kind of art, or was it always music?
I painted in high school. I would have, I didn't go to college right away after high school. And I think if I did, I would have gone to art school for painting.
Oh, okay.
And then when I did finally get around to going to college, I went for chemical engineering and ended up working in physics. So however that shakes out,
Yeah, I feel like we would need 10 hours to unpack just that sentence alone. But how do you go from being like, I might have done painting and like, chemical engineering, like, oh, right. That's what got you from A to B on that one? or A to Z, perhaps?
It's a great question. I'd like to know.
The condensed version is that between high school and college, I worked as a bike messenger for a bunch of years in San Francisco. And when I went to college, I thought I still wanted to work outside. So I started thinking I was going to major in forestry because you could do outside stuff. And to do forestry, you had to take chemistry. And I really fell in love with chemistry. And then at the time, I also had a lot of friends that were artists who were a couple of years older than me and had gotten out of college and were getting all depressed trying to figure out how to make money with their art degrees. So I looked around and said, what's the opposite of that? And at the time, chemical engineering had the highest starting salary straight out of a bachelor's. So I said, well, why don't I do that? That's the hardest one you can do with the highest risk, highest reward. That sounds like a smart idea.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The data science of whenever that was, I think, right? Because I'm probably going to get fired for saying this, but I think a lot of my students get dazzled by the fact that data scientists tend to get the highest salaries out of graduation now. And it sounds like chemical engineering was that 10 years ago or 15 or 20 or however.
Now with global warming, it's less cool to go work for Chevron or whatever.
Interesting point. Yeah.
Get the highest price point on that one, you know? Which I never did. I realized pretty quickly, like, I'm probably not going to go work for, a major oil company.
I'm just picturing you like driving the Exxon Valdez like into the coast or whatever it was. Wow. But even the move from going into forestry versus to electrical engineering is a big one. But I definitely get it's striking to me that you were like, all right, let me do the thing that's the opposite of what all my starving artist friends are doing.
And now most of those people aren't, or a good number of them aren't in the arts anymore. And I am. So I don't know how that one works. Yeah. For both of you, did science play a role in your childhood as well? So Andrew, you said you fell in love with chemistry. Is that something you knew for yourself earlier on? And Kathryn, I'm curious if it was like, if that's a side of, PR involves a lot of science and strategizing, but was that side of your personality present as you were growing up as well?
I think that it had a lot to do with being in the middle of a lot of like arts community. And my parents were very, very social. We always had like, they called them bachelors and orphans, which is like all of their friends who were not married would come over and we'd like have chili nights. I don't know. I was just like always around a lot of people. We actually did a lot of drama. We were like in all the drama and the choral stuff and all of that. So I think it has something to do with just like communication style and being raised around a lot of people and something like that. Like, I think it was more like a communications based thing for the PR. And then also, like, honestly, I fell in, because it was art adjacent, because it's like supporting the arts.
Right.
So it was a way to be close to it. But like put it down because I got a desk job now.
Right. Got it. And Andrew, what about you? Did you grow up science minded along with the painting and the music, or was that a surprise for you?
That was a bit more of a surprise. I always knew I could handle the math part of it as a kid. Like I tested well in math as a kid, but and my parents are pretty academic, but they're not. They're not laboratory scientists or anything, So that was a bit of a surprise, I think.
Do you think that if you both went only into music, that you would miss the, PR side or the desk job side of things? Like, why not go fully into music? And I say this as a impassionate third-party observer, not as a client at this moment, because I realize that there's a conflict of interest here.
There is, I've heard two sides of what happens when your entire career is your passion. And one is like, you do something you love and then you'll never work a day in your life, which is bullshit. And then also, I just don't believe it. I think it's work.
Same.
I think it's like physical work. I think it's taxing. And then the other one is, like building an artistic career is just like taking the thing you love and making it your day job, which is a little bit like, saying like you can kind of turn your passion into a bit of a drag if it's all that you do.
Yeah. Is there this thing you love? Would you like to dread it on Mondays? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is another way that it's nice to have other things, like a few disciplines going, a few careers.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that because every day still am like, I got to switch. I got to pick one. I got to whatever. And you're right. So I want to get to existential corner, but first, and this is a mini pre-existential corner, I want to hear from you both. What's one thing you really love about, and I'm going to oversimplify and I'm going to put music and PR into the two categories, though I realize that there's many different flavors. What's one thing you love about each of those worlds? And what's one thing that I don't want to say like least favorite thing, but something that like irritates you about those worlds? And it can be your work, it could be something about the industry. I want a highlight and a low light for each of you.
For PR and music?
Yep.
Highlight, low light. Okay. PR highlight is just like that positive energy that you have when everybody's sort of like working optimistically. It's really exciting to see pieces come in and everybody's excited. Something I hate about PR is the opposite, because people kind of, they sort of determine the energy of a campaign. So if they come in sort of mean and skeptical, that's how it's going to go. And it's a bummer for everybody, including me, because I also want the best stuff for everybody. And then music, something that I love is just the actual performing of it, like those moments of the performance on stage or the performance when you're composing into a score. I really, really love those moments. And something I hate about it is when you have to do it over and over again. I don't have a very good work ethic when it comes to that kind of thing. I want to like perform it and then be like, I think that was good. I'm done.
Like, we're done. Next. Yeah. That speaks to me. That speaks to me for sure. All right, Andrew, what do you got?
Okay. Well, PR, the highlight is getting to support art and artists that I think are great. That's super, that's just super positive. And I feel like I know why I'm doing the work that I do in that sense.
Cosign. I like his too.
And,
good.
And I'll skip to the music highlight because I'm going to do a low light that they both sort of share. The music highlight, I think, would be, when it's at its best on stage or in the studio or in the practice space or wherever it is. It's like the closest to oblivion and some might say God, some might say, whatever that is that you can kind of get when you're alive and on Earth and just in a room somewhere. It's you kind of can get out of yourself in just a wonderful way. And then the low light for both is that they're both really kind of campaign based, and so it always feels like there's more you could possibly do if time and money and physics were unlimited. If there were no constraints, that there's like another email you could send, or you could tweak a little more on that mix or whatever it is.
Right.
So you gotta cut them loose at some point, and declare it done.
Right. Well, and that kind of brings me to something that I was thinking about as we were talking about constraints before, which is like, you've got to impose them on yourself if they aren't already given to you, right? Or you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, your high is like, I got to get into music. That's what I need. Oblivion, God. I don't know. I was like, do I get that out of stand-up? I'm not so sure. I mean, it's great, but so that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
It doesn't always happen in music. It definitely doesn't always happen.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Are you ready for existential corner in our remaining moments together?
Sure.
Great.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right. So we're talking like one sentence, even one word answers if you want. And I'll take turns. So we'll start and we'll have Andrew, you go first, and then Kathryn, and then I'll swap you. So you're not infused by each other's ideas. So first, I want to hear about one very big regret in your life. Starting light.
One very big regret. Never went in to go see the Grateful Dead when I went to many Grateful Dead parking lots and partied as a bad teenager and never went to see them.
Wow.
And then Jerry died.
Oh, all right.
Mine would be putting the music down when I started PR, like consciously quitting on purpose. I think that was a dumb move. And I think it was a little bit like destructive to me for a while.
Yep. Okay. Kathryn, we'll start with you. What is one thing you're very afraid of? What's a big fear? These are going to lighten up. Don't worry. I mean, barely, but yeah.
I'm afraid of always having my foot in my mouth because I feel like I kind of do a lot. Yes.
I think I'm afraid not getting the sounds that are sometimes in my head out and into recorded or performed form, having ideas that don't get crystallized.
Just sort of live in the background. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Andrew, we'll start with you. What's one thing you're very proud of?
My mixing.
Nice.
Skills. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm proud of owning and operating a PR firm that I built from the ground for 15 years. I'm proud of that.
It's awesome. You should be proud of that. Am I allowed to be proud of that? I'm proud of that. I had nothing to do with it, but I'm very proud of it. All right. One piece of useful advice that you've heard or that someone gave you or that you gave someone else that kind of like stuck in your head that you hang on to.
No one else's opinion of you is any of your business.
Ooh. I'm going to play that every time I open social media. Good. Okay. Or just stop opening social media. How about that? Okay, Andrew.
There's a Ferris Bueller line where he says something like A, you can never go too far, and B, if I'm going to get caught, it's not going to be by a guy like that. And I think that's words to live by, no matter who the guy is or the too far, what it is.
Yeah.
Doing,
Yeah. And never go too far. I like that too. That's going to get me in trouble. Okay, good. All right. Two more. What is one thing that you think you are especially good at? Like we've talked about lots of kind of big things, but like a very narrow, specific talent that you have, and it can be related to anything at all.
This is me.
Yeah.
I think gathering lots of disparate moving parts and assembling them into something cohesive and coherent. And I think that works for both music and for PR.
I bet. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll say, there's like two that are battling it out, but I'm going to say,
both are allowed. You can
creating, have two. Okay. Well, I think concise communications, getting things said and done quickly and clearly. And the other one I was going to say is, which is not concise or clear or quick.
Perfect.
Turning emotion into sound.
Yeah. Good. Love it. That's a way of being concise and clear. Emotion is a massive thing and you're turning it into sound. So, all right. Beautiful. All right.
I like that.
Last one. And you can go in any order. Let's relax. I feel like I've made this into a thing.
I appreciate the structure.
Yeah, we need order.
It's a constraint. Yeah.
It's a constraint. I'm going to start getting a buzzer and just really cut people off. All right. Last question. Answer as you see fit. What is the meaning of life?
42.
Okay.
That's a bad answer. That's not going to be my answer. That's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Then I'll say 42.
Oh, do you think my answer was good?
I mean,
it is a good answer.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
okay? Then I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
Fine. like ending on a fight. You're like, all right, fine. It's 42. Done. Yeah. I'll take 42. That's as good an answer as we're going to get from anyone. So 42 it is. This is the end of our show. Thank you both so much for being here. Before we go, where can we hear all this? First of all, where can we hear all your amazing music? What movies should I go watch immediately? And how do we get involved in Shark Party if people are listening, want some PR and or want to find out more about all the awesome people that you're supporting? Where do we go?
Well, sharkpartymedia.com.
Okay.
Is for Shark Party. Our band, Nevada, it's on Spotify and whatnot. Right now, there's an EP and a single up there and soon to be an LP.
The EP is called Wild and Glowing, which is easier to search on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Wild and Glowing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the films are mostly little short films that are impossible to find. But
perfect.
Our buzznumbermusic.com is our film scoring website, which has a bunch of samples. It has a reel that has Parker Posey and Aaliyah Shawkat talking in it over some of our music and whatnot.
Say that one more time. I realize it's a recording. I can play it again, but I'm lazy.
Buzznumbermusic.com.
Buzznumbermusic.com. All right. We'll add links below in the show notes so that folks can find it. And any other place that people should go, or are those that covers it?
I think that about covers it. I think those two spaces kind of say everything that's going on. Anybody can reach out about anything, anytime.
Such is the way of the modern age. Yeah.
You click in enough, you'll find discographies for us and stuff. You can see all the old bands we played in and all the old records I've made and stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm going to go do some further stalking than I've already done. And I will say that I fully endorse, of course, your PR skills and also your live shows. So folks find out information about the next time you're performing live. I highly recommend that they check it out. What is your next live show?
We're going to play upstate at a place called Cabernet Franks.
Nice. Nice. So a huge upstate listenership. So I'm sure they're all the season 2 Stranger Things folks are living upstate and they're listening. So they'll...
and the station in Woodstock also.
Yeah.
April 9th and 10th.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, if you're anywhere near those areas, I highly recommend you check it out. In the meantime, check out both Kathryn Musilek and Andrew Gerhan on the various internets. Thank you both for being here, and good night to you. It's nighttime, and good day and so on to our listeners, depending on what time it is for you. Thanks for listening. Bye. And that's our show. Thank you so much for listening to Majoring in Everything. I'm your host, Andrea Jones-Rooy, and Majoring in Everything is a proud member of the World's Smartest Podcast Network. Be sure to check out worldsmartestpodcastnetwork.com and our partner shows. We are edited by Eric P. Stipe, who says that I need an outro, so I'm making one. Eric, does this count? Are you happy? I hope so. Thanks again for listening. Keep majoring in everything. Bye.